Why do you need keys to my husband's house? My daughter-in-law, Chloe, tossed that question at me that afternoon while I was digging desperately through my purse, trying to find my keys. We were in the living room of my son Ryan's house, and I had only stopped by for a quick visit, like I always did on Tuesday afternoons. But that day, something had changed in her eyes. There was a new coldness, a distance I hadn't noticed before. Or maybe I had noticed it and just chose to ignore it, the way mothers do when we don't want to see the obvious. I froze, my hands still deep in my bag, my fingers brushing against every object, searching for those damn keys I swore I had put in there just this morning. Her tone wasn't rude, it wasn't a shout, it was something worse. It was that icy calm, that way of pronouncing each word as if she were explaining something to a foolish child who didn't understand the basic rules of social etiquette. I just can't find them, Chloe. I always keep them in this side pocket. But they're not here today, I replied, trying to keep my composure, trying not to show the humiliation that was already starting to climb up my throat like a tight knot. She was standing by the living room window, her arms crossed over her chest, watching me with that look I had learned to recognize in recent months. It wasn't open hostility. It was something more subtle, more dangerous. It was as if she were studying me, evaluating my every move to find a flaw, an error that would justify what she clearly already thought of me. Elizabeth, she said, using my full name. She never called me Mom or even Liz, always Elizabeth, creating that formal distance that hurt more than any direct insult. I think you need to ask yourself why you really need permanent access to this house. Ryan and I are a family now. We have our privacy, our own life. It isn't healthy for you to just come and go as you please. I felt the air grow heavy in that room. The same living room where I had helped Ryan paint the walls 3 years ago, where we had assembled every piece of furniture together, where I had personally hung those very drapes that Chloe now glanced at with such disdain, saying they were too dated for her style. Chloe, I don't just come and go as I please. I always ring the bell. I always text before I come over. The keys are just for emergencies, you know that, I tried to explain, feeling my voice sound weaker than I wanted, more defensive. Emergencies? She repeated, letting out a short, dry laugh completely devoid of humor. Like what kind of emergencies, Elizabeth? Coming over to check if we cleaned the kitchen, right? Letting yourself in to water those plants you insist on leaving here, even though I've told you a dozen times I don't want them in the house? Every word was an accusation disguised as a question. Every sentence was a reminder that I was being judged, measured, and found lacking in every way. And the worst part was, she had that terrible ability to make it all sound so reasonable, to present her complaints as the legitimate concerns of a wife just trying to protect her marriage. I swallowed hard and kept digging in my purse, even though I already knew the keys weren't there. I checked the main compartment again, the side pockets, even the small zipper pouch where I kept my driver's license. Nothing. My whole keychain was gone, the one with that little silver heart charm Ryan had given me for my 60th birthday. Look, I don't know where they are. Maybe I left them at home without realizing it. I lied because I knew perfectly well I had brought them. I could perfectly remember their feel in my hand when I locked my apartment door that afternoon. Could you lend me your set just so I can make a copy? I promise I'll bring them right back tomorrow. Chloe walked over to me then, moving slowly, and I could see her lips curve into something that was meant to be an understanding smile, but looked more like a smirk of quiet victory. Elizabeth, I think this is a sign. A sign that maybe it's time for you to redefine your relationship with this house, with us. Ryan isn't a little boy anymore. He doesn't need his mom coming over every couple of days to check on him. He has a wife now, he has responsibilities, he has a life to build with me. There it was again, that way of talking that turned every comment into a life lesson, as if I were a senile old woman incapable of understanding the proper boundaries between a mother and her adult son, as if my 62 years hadn't taught me anything about respect, about family, about love. I understand Ryan has his own life, Chloe. I've always understood that, but I'm still his mother, and this house is important to me too. I don't come here to inspect or to bother. I come because I like spending time with my son, seeing him, knowing he's okay. Well, Ryan is perfectly fine, she replied curtly. He's better than ever, actually. Ever since we established some clearer boundaries about visits, he's been more relaxed, more focused on us as a couple. You don't see it, Elizabeth, but sometimes your constant presence creates tension. He won't tell you because he doesn't want to hurt your feelings, but as his wife, I can see it. That was a punch straight to the gut. The insinuation that my own son felt burdened by me, that my motherly love was actually a weight he carried out of pity or obligation. Chloe knew exactly where to aim to cause the most damage, and she did it with that soft, almost gentle voice, as if she were doing me a favor by opening my eyes to a painful truth. If Ryan felt that way, he would tell me, I replied, though my voice trembled slightly. We've always had an open communication, ever since he was a kid. Oh, really? And when was the last time you two had a real conversation, just the two of you, without me present? When was the last time Ryan reached out to you on his own, and not just because you showed up here? I couldn't answer that. Chloe had touched a wound I had been ignoring for months. It was true that lately I was always the one who called first, who suggested the visits, who asked if I could stop by. Ryan didn't show up on Sunday mornings with donuts and coffee like he used to before he got married. He didn't call me just to chat about his day or ask for advice about a problem at work. Look, Elizabeth, Chloe continued, and this time her voice took on an almost compassionate tone that I found even more unbearable than her coldness. I don't want to be the bad guy in this story. I really don't. I know you raised Ryan on your own after your husband died. I know you made a lot of sacrifices for him, and that's admirable. But he's 25 years old now. He has a wife, and he needs space to grow as a man, to build his own family, without feeling like he has to check in with you all the time. I have never asked him to check in with me, I protested, feeling indignation start to replace the sadness in my chest. I have my own life, my job, my friends. I'm not some dependent old woman with nothing better to do than bother her son. Then prove it, she challenged me, taking another step closer. Prove it by letting him live without showing up here every Tuesday and Friday. Prove it by not calling him 3 times a day to ask if he's eaten lunch or if he has clean clothes. Prove it by accepting that you are no longer the most important woman in his life. I am. There it was. She had finally said the quiet part out loud, what she had been implying for months with her gestures, her looks, her seemingly innocent comments. This wasn't about the keys. It had never been about the keys. This was about power, about territory, about who had the right to love Ryan and in what way. I stood there in silence, staring at her, trying to process what I had just heard. Chloe held my gaze without blinking, with the absolute confidence of someone who knows they're holding all the cards. She slept next to my son every night, she shared his daily life, she had access to his most intimate thoughts, and I was just the mother who lived 20 minutes away, waiting for scraps of his attention. I think I'd better go, I said finally, zipping up my purse with trembling hands. When I find my keys, I'll let you know. Elizabeth, wait, she called out as I was already walking to the door. Don't leave angry. I just want you to understand the situation. We can have a good relationship, you and I, but with clear boundaries. I'm not your enemy. I turned to look at her one last time before leaving. She was standing there in the middle of the living room, in the house I had helped him get, surrounded by the furniture I had helped pay for when Ryan was just starting out at his job and didn't have enough savings. And she was talking to me about boundaries, about respect, about personal space, as if I were the intruder and not the woman who had given everything for the son she now claimed as exclusively hers. You're right, Chloe, I said, with a calmness that surprised even me. You're not my enemy, and I'm not yours. But if you ever have children, you'll understand that a mother's love can't be limited as easily as you think. See you later. I left that house with a weight on my chest I hadn't felt in years. I walked to my car, parked on the street, opened the door, and sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. My hands were shaking so badly I had to press them against my legs to control them. I took a deep breath 1, 2, 3 times, trying not to cry right there in the middle of the street where any neighbor could see me. How had it come to this? When exactly had my relationship with Ryan changed so much? I tried to pinpoint the precise moment, the specific conversation, the incident that had marked the before and after, but I couldn't find one. It had been a gradual process, so slow that I hadn't noticed it until it was already too late. I remembered when Ryan introduced me to Chloe 2 years ago. It had been at a little Italian restaurant, one of those small, cozy places that serve generous portions of pasta. She had arrived holding his hand, smiling, polite, asking me about my job as an admin at an accounting firm. She seemed like a nice girl, maybe a little reserved, but nothing that made me suspect what was to come. "Mom, I'm so happy," Ryan had told me that night, with that light in his eyes men get when they're deeply in love. "Chloe is special. She's different from all the other girls I've known. I think she's the one." And I had been happy for him, genuinely happy. I had raised a glass of cheap wine and hugged this girl I barely knew, wishing her the best, hoping she would make my son happy. How naive I had been. I hadn't seen the signs, the small manipulations that Chloe had already begun to weave, with the patience of a spider building its web. At first, it had been subtle things. A comment about how late I called at night, suggesting Ryan needed to rest for work. An observation about how much I cooked for him, implying it made him feel guilty for not visiting me more often. A casual mention about how important it was for young couples to have time alone, without outside interference. I had ignored those signs because I didn't want to be that nosy, paranoid mother-in-law that everyone makes fun of. I didn't want to become the stereotype of the possessive mother who can't let her son go, so I had taken steps back. I reduced my calls. I waited for Ryan to reach out to me instead of me reaching out first. And Ryan, my sweet Ryan, had started to pull away too. Not dramatically, not with a conversation where he told me he needed space. His calls just became less frequent, his visits shorter, his hugs more rushed. And when I asked him if everything was okay, he would answer with a tired smile that told me nothing, because the words that came out of his mouth were generic and empty. "Everything's perfect, Mom. Work is just really busy." "I'm fine, Ma, don't worry so much. Chloe says hi. She says we should have you over for dinner soon." Empty promises, superficial conversations, that distance that just kept growing without either of us having the courage to talk about it directly. And I had resigned myself to it, convinced myself that this was just how things were when kids got married, that it was natural for them to prioritize their wives over their mothers. But now, sitting in my car in front of my son's house, with Chloe's words still ringing in my ears, I realized there was something deeply wrong with all of this. It wasn't natural for a wife to see her husband's mother as a threat. It wasn't normal for me to have to implicitly ask for permission to see my own son. It wasn't fair that I was being made to feel guilty for the love I felt for the human being I had brought into this world and raised all on my own. I started the car and drove to my apartment on autopilot, not really paying attention to the streets I passed. I got to my apartment complex just as the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that on any other day I would have found beautiful. But that afternoon, everything seemed gray, dull, lifeless. I walked up the stairs to the third floor where my small apartment was, that two-bedroom space that had been my refuge for the last 10 years, ever since Ryan moved out for college. I opened the door, and the first thing I did was search every possible place where I might have left my keys. I checked the small table by the entrance, the kitchen counter, my bedroom, even under the sofa cushions. Nothing. I knew I wouldn't find them, because I was absolutely certain I had taken them with me that afternoon. I clearly remembered the familiar weight of the keychain in my hand when I left my apartment. I sat on the living room sofa, that old brown fabric couch I'd bought secondhand when Ryan was 10, and that had been with me through so many hard times. I closed my eyes and let the memories come, the ones I had been avoiding because they hurt too much. I remembered when I bought that house for Ryan. It was 3 years ago, when he was 22, and had just landed his first stable job as an admin assistant at a tech company. The salary wasn't bad, but it wasn't enough to buy property in the city. I had been saving for years, putting away every extra dollar I earned, sacrificing vacations and personal splurges. I had put together $25,000 for the down payment on a small house in a decent neighborhood, not luxurious but safe, with good access to public transportation. I found the perfect property, a 2-story, 3-bedroom house with a small backyard and enough space for Ryan to grow, to start a family one day. The total price was $85,000, and I handled all the negotiations with the bank for the mortgage. But here was the part Chloe didn't know, the part I had kept secret, for reasons I was now beginning to understand better. When we did the paperwork, I put the property in my name, not Ryan's, but mine. I told him it was just for convenience with the bank, that his credit history was still too short, and it would be easier if I was listed as the primary buyer. But it's your house, honey. I had told him that day when we signed the papers. I'm just helping with the paperwork. You pay the mortgage every month with your job. You take care of it. You live in it. It's yours. And he had hugged me with tears in his eyes, thanking me for being the best mom in the world, promising that one day he would pay me back for everything I had done for him. I had stroked his hair, just like when he was a little boy, and told him he didn't owe me anything, that seeing him happy was payment enough. For the first 2 years, Ryan faithfully paid the monthly mortgage payment, which was $650. Every month he transferred the money to my account, and I made the payment to the bank. It was an arrangement that worked perfectly. He had his independence, his own space, and I had the peace of mind of knowing my son was well established. But then Chloe arrived. She moved in with him 6 months after they started dating, and from that moment, things began to change. She started decorating the house to her taste, buying new furniture, changing curtains, and painting walls. And with every change she made, her sense of ownership over that place grew stronger. I got up from the sofa and walked to my bedroom, where I kept all my important documents in a small safe in the closet. I pulled out the box, entered the combination on the lock, and opened it. There they were, organized in different colored folders. My birth certificate, my high school diploma, and the property deeds for Ryan's house. I took the green folder that held the house documents and opened it on my bed. I turned the pages slowly, reading every clause, every legal term, confirming what I already knew. The house was in my name. Elizabeth Cole was the legally registered owner with the city. Ryan was listed on some documents as the occupant and responsible for payments, but legally, the property was mine. I had never thought of using this against him. I had never even considered mentioning this detail, because to me, it was irrelevant. I had bought that house for my son, and in my mind, it was always his, no matter what the papers said. But now, after the conversation with Chloe, after hearing her say with such confidence that it was her husband's house, something inside me had shifted. It wasn't revenge I felt, not exactly. It was more like an awakening, a sudden clarity about the real situation. Chloe had treated me like an intruder in a house that wasn't even legally hers or Ryan's. She had lectured me on boundaries and respect while living in a property I had bought with the sweat of my brow, with years of saving and sacrifice. I put the documents back in the box and locked it carefully. I didn't know what I was going to do with this information yet, but something told me it was going to be important to have it handy. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like I had some power in this situation that had become so unbalanced. I barely slept that night. I just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the small humiliations I had endured from Chloe over the last few months. The comments about my clothes being too dated, her suggestions that I should find new hobbies appropriate for my age, the way she always found an excuse to cut my visits short. I remembered their wedding day, a year ago. It had been a small ceremony in the backyard of the house because they had decided they didn't want to spend a lot of money on a big party. I had contributed $3,000 to help with the costs, money I had taken from my emergency savings without a second thought because I wanted my son to have a special day. But during the whole celebration, Chloe had barely spoken to me. She was busy attending to her friends, to her parents who had flown in from another city, to Ryan's co-workers. I had sat in a corner of the yard, smiling for photos when asked, feeling more like a guest than the mother of the groom. And when it came time for the traditional mother-son dance, Chloe had suggested they just do a fun group dance with all the guests to break with old traditions and create more inclusive moments. Ryan had agreed, looking at me with a shy apology in his eyes, which I had accepted with a smile because I didn't want to ruin his day. But that night, when I returned alone to my apartment after the wedding, I had cried for hours. I cried for the dance we never had, for that tradition I had dreamed of ever since Ryan was a little boy and would step on my feet while I taught him to dance in our old living room. I cried because I realized I was losing my son, bit by bit, and I didn't know how to stop it. The phone rang at 11 o'clock at night, pulling me from my thoughts. It was Ryan. My heart leaped with hope, thinking that maybe he had sensed my distress that afternoon, that maybe he was calling to ask if I was okay, to apologize for Chloe's behavior. "Mom?" His voice sounded tired on the other end of the line. "Chloe told me what happened today with the keys." "Oh yes," I replied, trying to keep my voice neutral. "I lost them, but I found a spare set I had put away." I lied, because I didn't want to worry him, because I still had that habit of protecting him from unpleasant things. "Look, Ma, I know Chloe can be a little direct with the things she says, but she does have a point about some things." I fell silent, hearing those words come from my son's mouth. She does have a point about some things. As if Chloe were the voice of reason and I was the one who was wrong, the one who needed correcting, the one who didn't understand how adult relationships worked. "What things does she have a point about, Ryan?" I asked, and this time I couldn't hide the pain in my voice. "That I shouldn't have keys to your house? That I bother you too much? That my love as a mother is a burden to you?" "Mom, don't put words in my mouth," he replied with a frustrated sigh. "Chloe didn't say that, exactly. She's just trying to set healthy boundaries for our marriage. All the books we've read on relationships say it's important for couples to have their private space without family interference." "Books?" I repeated, incredulous. "You need to read books now to know how to treat your own mother? Ryan, I raised you by myself for 25 years. Your father died when you were 4, and I was left with nothing but my admin job and the determination to give you a good life. I never treated you like a burden. I never made you feel like you were an inconvenience in my life. And now it turns out I'm the inconvenience in yours." "It's not like that, Mom. You're exaggerating. Chloe just wants us to have a more mature adult relationship. I'm not a kid who needs his mom to come and take care of him all the time. And when have I ever acted like you were a kid?" My voice was rising now, the frustration of months finally finding an outlet. "When have I ever disrespected you or treated you like you couldn't take care of yourself? I just come to visit you, Ryan. I just want to see my son, spend time with him, know he's okay. Is that so terrible? Is that so invasive?" There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear Ryan breathing, could imagine him sitting on his living room sofa, probably with Chloe right next to him, listening to every word of our conversation, coaching him on what to say, how to respond. "Mom, I love you. You know that. But I need you to understand that my life has changed. I have a wife now. I have responsibilities to her too. I can't always be available for you like I was before." "I have never asked you to be always available," I answered, feeling the tears start to well up in my eyes. "I only ask that you don't treat me like a stranger, that you don't let your wife disrespect me in your own house, that you remember that I am also a part of your life. Chloe didn't disrespect you. She was just being honest with you about how she feels. That's what mature people do, Mom. They talk about things directly instead of letting resentment build up." There it was again, that word, mature. As if I were a petulant teenager who couldn't handle an adult conversation. As if my hurt feelings were proof of my immaturity rather than a normal response to being mistreated. "Fine, Ryan," I said finally, wiping the tears with the back of my hand. "I get the message. I'll give you both the space you need. I won't bother you anymore with my inconvenient visits." "Mom, you don't have to be like that. No one is saying you can't come visit. We're just asking that you give us more advance notice, that you respect our schedule, that you understand that sometimes we're going to be busy and won't be able to see you." "I always give notice, Ryan. I always call or text, but it seems like it's never enough for Chloe. There's always something I'm doing wrong. There's always a new rule I have to follow. Because you don't respect the rules we have given you." He shot back, and for the first time, I heard real irritation in his voice. "We asked you not to come over before 4 o'clock in the afternoon on weekends because those are our private mornings, and you showed up last Saturday at 2. We told you not to bring so much food every time you come, because we're trying to cook more ourselves, and you keep showing up with 3 Tupperware containers full." Each accusation was a stab. Things I had done out of love, with the intention of helping, of showing I cared, were now being presented as violations of their privacy, as acts of unwanted intrusion. "You know what, Ryan? You're right about everything. I'm the one who's wrong. I'm a terrible mother who doesn't know how to respect boundaries. But let me tell you something those books of yours might not have explained. One day, you're going to need me. You're going to want to come to my house to escape some problem, to ask for advice, to feel heard. And on that day, I will be here for you, because that's what mothers do. But I am not going to keep begging for scraps of your attention. I am not going to keep apologizing for loving you too much. Mom, you're being dramatic. No, Ryan, I'm being honest. And since we're on the subject of honesty, let me ask you something. Do you really feel that I'm a burden in your life? Or is that Chloe convincing you of it? Another silence. This one was heavier, loaded with meaning. When Ryan finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. I don't think you're a burden. But Chloe is right that sometimes you hold on really tight. And it makes me feel guilty when I want to do things just with her, when I want to prioritize my marriage. Then do it, son. Prioritize your marriage. I won't stop you. But don't ask me to applaud while you're pushing me out of your life. I hung up the phone before he could respond, before he could hear my voice break completely. I let myself cry then, really cry, with those deep sobs that come from the center of your chest and hurt physically. I cried for the relationship I'd had with my son, one that now seemed to be destroyed. I cried for the years I had dedicated to raising him, loving him, building a bond I thought was unbreakable. But I also cried for myself, for being so naive, for believing that love was enough, that shared history meant something, that the bonds of blood were stronger than the manipulations of a woman who had only been in my son's life for 2 years. I fell asleep that night with the phone in my hand, hoping Ryan would call back, that he'd apologize, tell me he'd been too harsh, that he loved me, and nothing Chloe said could ever change that. But the call never came. The following days were strange. Empty. I went about my normal routine, went to my job at the accounting firm, had lunch with my coworkers, came home in the evenings. But there was a constant hole in my chest, an absence that grew heavier with every hour that passed without news from Ryan. I didn't call him. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one to reach out first. I wanted to see how long it would take for him to notice my absence, to realize something had changed between us. A week went by. Then 2. My phone remained silent, except for texts from friends and work-related calls. No text from Ryan asking how I was. No casual call to tell me about his day. It was as if I had vanished from his life, and he hadn't even noticed. The pain of that realization was worse than any cruel word Chloe could have said. It made me understand that maybe she was right about one thing. I had become disposable in my son's life. He could move on perfectly fine without me. Without my visits, without my calls, without my constant presence that I thought was comforting but was apparently just annoying. It was in the 3rd week that something inside me changed. I was at my desk reviewing some financial statements when my boss, Miss Jenkins, came in with a folder in her hands and a kind smile on her face. She was a woman in her 50s, direct but fair, and in the 12 years I'd worked for her, we had developed a relationship that went beyond just professional. Elizabeth, have you got a moment? She asked, sitting in the chair opposite my desk without waiting for an answer. I've noticed you've been different lately. Quieter, more distracted. Everything okay at home? I tried to smile and brush it off. Oh, just some family stuff, Miss Jenkins. Nothing serious. She gave me that penetrating look she used when she knew someone was lying. Elizabeth, I've known you for years. I know when something is eating you up inside. Is it your son? Ryan's fine. And then, unable to hold it in any longer, it all came pouring out. I told her about Chloe, about the lost keys, about the phone call with Ryan, about the 3 weeks of silence. I told her how I felt displaced, rejected, as if everything I had built with my son for 25 years was crumbling before my eyes. Miss Jenkins listened in silence, nodding occasionally, never interrupting. When I finished, she sighed deeply and leaned back in her chair. You know what your problem is, Elizabeth, she said finally. You've spent so many years being a mother, you forgot to be a woman. You forgot that you have value beyond what you can give to your son. And now that he's building his own life, you feel like you have nothing left because you put all your eggs in one basket. Her words hurt because they were true. Ever since my husband died, my entire life had revolved around Ryan. Every decision I made, every plan, every dream, he was always part of it. I had sacrificed opportunities to rebuild my own life, to date other men, to travel, to pursue hobbies or personal interests. Everything had been for Ryan, because of Ryan, thinking of Ryan. But that's not all, Miss Jenkins continued, leaning forward. Your other problem is that you've let yourself be steamrolled. That daughter-in-law of yours is manipulating you, and you're letting her, because you're afraid of losing your son. But let me tell you something, Elizabeth. If your son is letting his wife treat you like this, if he's not defending the woman who raised him, who sacrificed everything for him, then maybe it's time you stood up for yourself. And how am I supposed to do that? I asked, my voice breaking. He's my son, Miss Jenkins. I can't just cut him out of my life. I'm not telling you to cut him out. I'm telling you to value yourself, to stop begging for love and attention, to show them that you have boundaries too, and when someone crosses them, there are consequences. Those words stayed with me for the rest of the day. That night, alone in my apartment, I pulled out the box with the house documents again. I spread them out on the dining room table and read them carefully, this time not just to verify they were in my name, but to think about the implications. Legally, that house was mine. I had every right to enter it whenever I wanted, to make any changes I wanted, to make any decisions I deemed necessary. Ryan paid a monthly fee, yes, but that didn't give him legal ownership of the property. And Chloe, as much as she acted like the lady of the manor, had absolutely zero rights to that property. It wasn't revenge I was feeling. It was something more complex, deeper. It was a need to get back some control over a situation that had spiraled completely out of my hands. It was the desire to show them that I was not a helpless old woman they could push around and manipulate without consequences. I spent the next few days thinking, planning. I didn't do anything impulsive, didn't make any rash decisions, but I did start to consider options that I would have never even imagined before. What if I decided to sell the house? Or what if I wanted to make major renovations? Or what if I simply exercised my legal right to enter the property whenever I wanted? It was the Monday of the 4th week without contact from Ryan when I finally got a text from him. It was short, casual, as if the last few weeks of silence had never happened. Hey Mom, how are you? Chloe and I are going out of town this weekend. Just letting you know in case you need anything. I read the text 3 times, analyzing every word, every comma. There was no apology, no acknowledgement that we hadn't spoken in almost a month. Just a casual update, probably sent more out of obligation than genuine concern. And the worst part was that last phrase, in case you need anything, as if I was the one dependent on him, when the reality was the exact opposite. I replied with the same coldness he had used. I'm fine, have a good trip. I didn't add the heart emojis I usually did. I didn't ask where they were going or how long they'd be gone. I didn't offer to go water their plants or check on the house. Just a polite, distant response, the kind you'd give a casual acquaintance. That night I made a decision. If they were going to be out of town for the weekend, I was going to use that time to do something I had been considering for weeks. I was going to go into that house, my house, and I was going to retrieve some things that belonged to me. I wasn't going to steal anything. I wasn't going to cause any damage. I was simply going to exercise my right as the legal owner to enter my own property. On Friday afternoon, when I was sure Ryan and Chloe had already left for their trip, I drove to the house. I brought a copy of the property deeds with me, just in case a neighbor decided to call the police on me. I also brought the keys I had supposedly lost, but had actually found days later at the bottom of my purse, exactly where I remembered putting them. I had always suspected Chloe had taken them that day, and then slipped them back into my purse without me noticing, just to create the drama over the keys and have an excuse to confront me. But I had no way to prove it, and frankly, I didn't care anymore. The important thing was that I now had access to the house. I parked my car in the driveway and walked to the front door. The neighborhood was quiet, just the distant bark of a dog and the sound of a lawnmower somewhere down the street. I put the key in the lock and turned it. The door opened with a soft click. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. The house was silent, filled with that particular smell spaces have when their inhabitants are away. I looked around the living room and felt a strange mix of familiarity and alienation. I recognized this space. I had helped build it, but at the same time, it felt foreign, transformed by Chloe's presence into something that no longer belonged to me emotionally. I walked slowly through the living room, observing the changes that had been made since my last visit. The drapes I had hung were replaced with new cream-colored ones, more modern, but lacking character. The family photos that used to decorate the fireplace mantel had been reduced to just two, one of Ryan and Chloe's wedding, and one of them on a beach somewhere on vacation. The photos of Ryan as a child, the photos of us together, were gone. I went into the kitchen and opened the cabinets. There they were, the Tupperware containers I had brought over for months, stacked in a corner, forgotten. Some still had dried food remnants, as if no one had bothered to wash them after emptying them. I felt a pang of hurt seeing that. I had prepared those meals with love, thinking of my son, wanting to make sure he was eating well, and there they were, treated like disposable garbage. I went upstairs to the second floor. There were 3 bedrooms, the master where Ryan and Chloe slept, one they used as a home office, and a third that was mostly empty except for some boxes. I walked into the master bedroom and stopped at the threshold. The bed was perfectly made with gray sheets and white decorative pillows. There was a large dresser against one wall, with some of Chloe's beauty products arranged on top. On the nightstand on the side I assumed was Ryan's, there was a framed photo. I moved closer to see it better, and felt my heart contract. It was a picture of Chloe and Ryan on their honeymoon, hugging in front of a sunset. Beautiful, romantic, perfect. But what hurt was realizing that there wasn't a single picture of me in the entire room. It was as if I had been erased from my son's life, as if 25 years of shared history didn't even deserve a small space on his nightstand. I left that room with a heavy feeling in my chest. I went to the office and turned on the light. There was a desk with a computer, shelves with books, and a small file cabinet in the corner. I walked over to the file cabinet, not intending to snoop, just observing. It was locked. It was then I noticed something on the desk, an open folder with what looked like important documents. I got closer and, though I knew I shouldn't, I couldn't help but look. They were bank statements for Ryan and Chloe. Apparently, they had a joint account, and the numbers I saw surprised me. There were several recent charges for large amounts. $1,200 at a furniture store, $800 at a fine dining restaurant, $500 on clothes, $300 at a spa. The expenses piled up, page after page, showing a lifestyle that frankly seemed excessive for Ryan's salary. I kept looking through the papers, justifying my curiosity by telling myself that as the owner of the house, I had a right to know how they were managing their finances if it could affect the monthly payment. And then I found it. Something that made me stop cold. It was a letter from the bank, dated 2 weeks ago. A notification that the mortgage payment for that month had been rejected due to insufficient funds. It was the first time in 3 years that Ryan had missed the payment. The letter warned that if the situation wasn't rectified within the next 30 days, late fees would accumulate, and eventually, foreclosure proceedings could begin. I sat down in the desk chair, holding that letter with trembling hands. Was Ryan having financial problems? Why hadn't he told me anything? Or did he not even know the payment had been rejected? I remembered that I was the one who received the bank notifications, because the loan was in my name. This letter had probably come to my mailbox, and I hadn't seen it because I'd barely been checking my mail lately, too sunk in my own sadness. But then I looked again at the bank statements with all those excessive expenses, and the truth became clear. It wasn't that Ryan didn't have the money. It was that they were spending it on other things. Chloe was spending it on other things. While I had sacrificed, saving every dollar, while they were treating me like a burden and pushing me out of their lives, they were living beyond their means, buying unnecessary things, going to expensive restaurants, all instead of meeting the basic responsibility of paying for the house they lived in. I felt a cold anger rise in my chest. It wasn't the explosive, irrational anger of a frustrated moment. It was something more calculated, deeper. It was the indignation of someone who finally sees with perfect clarity how they have been used, manipulated, and disrespected. I took out my phone and took pictures of the documents, the bank statements, the bank letter, everything. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do with this information, but some instinct told me I was going to need it. I put everything back exactly as I had found it and left the office. I went downstairs and headed to the garage. There were some boxes stacked against a wall, boxes I recognized immediately. They were mine. Boxes of my things that I had left here temporarily when I painted my apartment last year. Family photos, some books, Christmas decorations, memories from when Ryan was a kid. I'd asked Ryan several times to help me bring them back to my place, but there was always an excuse. He was too busy. He had plans that weekend. We'll do it later, Mom. Now, seeing them abandoned in the garage, covered in dust, I realized it wasn't forgetfulness. It was contempt. It was Chloe telling him that this old junk had no place in her perfect modern home. I opened one of the boxes and pulled out a picture frame. It was a photo of Ryan at 6 years old, smiling with a missing tooth, holding up a drawing he had made in school. I remembered that day perfectly. It was his first day of school, and he was so nervous that I had to stay outside the school during the entire recess, just in case he needed me. When he came out, he ran to me with that drawing, so proud of his creation. I put the frame back in the box and decided I was taking these boxes home. They were mine, after all. And if Ryan and Chloe didn't want them here, I wanted them in my apartment, where they would be appreciated, where they meant more than just old junk taking up space. I was carrying the second box toward my car when I heard a car park in the driveway. My heart hammered in my chest. Ryan and Chloe were supposed to be gone all weekend. Had they forgotten something? Had their plans changed? I set the box down on the garage floor and walked toward the entrance. Sure enough, it was Ryan's car. The driver's door opened and he got out, followed by Chloe from the passenger side. They both stopped dead in their tracks when they saw me standing there in the doorway of the house, keys in my hand. "Mom?" Ryan's voice was a mix of surprise and annoyance. "What are you doing here? How did you get in?" Before I could answer, Chloe pushed past him, walking quickly toward me with her eyes narrowed in that expression I knew so well. The expression of someone about to make a scene. "Elizabeth, this is unbelievable. You broke into our house? While we were gone? That's breaking and entering. That's trespassing." I just stood there, looking at her, feeling a strange, calm wash over me. For weeks I had been scared, hurt, insecure. But in that moment, with the property deeds in my purse and the evidence of their excessive spending on my phone, I felt more powerful than I had in months. "It's not trespassing when the house is mine, Chloe," I said, my voice quiet but firm. She let out a dismissive laugh. "Your house? What are you talking about? This is Ryan's house, the house my husband and I live in." "It's my house," I repeated, reaching into my purse and pulling out the green folder with the documents. "It's in my name. I bought it. I paid the down payment. The loan is in my name. And according to this letter the bank sent 2 weeks ago, this month's payment was rejected for lack of funds." I watched the color drain from Chloe's face. Ryan hurried over, his expression confused. "What are you talking about, Mom? What letter?" "I made the payment this month. I transferred it just like always. It didn't make it to the bank's account, Ryan. It was rejected. And in the meantime, according to the bank statements I found in your office, you two have been spending thousands of dollars on furniture, restaurants, and clothes. You went through our private papers?" Chloe's voice went up an octave. "You let yourself into our office and went through our things? Ryan, are you going to let her do this? Your mother is completely out of control." But Ryan was looking at me with an expression I had never seen before. There was confusion there, yes, but also something else. Maybe the beginning of understanding, the dawn of a doubt. "Mom, is the house, is it really in your name?" he asked softly. "Yes, Ryan. It always has been. When we bought it, we put everything in my name because your credit history was too short. Don't you remember? I told you it was your house, and it is in spirit, but legally, the property is mine." Chloe took a step back, as if she'd been physically hit. "That can't be true," she said, but her voice had lost that arrogant certainty it always carried. "Ryan, tell her that's not true. You told me this house was yours, that you bought it with your own money." Ryan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized from his childhood that meant he was nervous or confused. I thought it was. Mom told me she was helping with the paperwork, but that the house was mine because I paid the mortgage every month. "And it is yours, son," I said, keeping my voice calm, even though I felt a whirlwind of emotions inside. I never wanted to use this against you, but after how I've been treated these last few weeks, after being pushed out of your life as if I don't matter, I think it's important you both know the real situation. You can't do this. Chloe stepped toward Ryan and grabbed his arm, as if staking a claim. She's manipulating you, honey. She's using legal tricks to control you. Don't you see it? This is exactly what I told you about your mother. She can't let go of control. I'm manipulating him? I repeated, feeling the anger start to seep through my calm. Chloe, I have kept my mouth shut for months, while you subtly insulted me, while you made me feel like an intruder in my own son's life. I've put up with your comments, your ridiculous rules, your way of treating me like I'm a foolish old woman who doesn't understand anything. And I said nothing because I didn't want to cause problems between you and Ryan. Mom, Ryan tried to interrupt, but I held up a hand. No, Ryan, let me finish. I've been silent for too long. Chloe, you came into my son's life and systematically started pushing me away. You turned every visit into a problem, every call into an intrusion, every gesture of love into inappropriate behavior. You made me feel guilty for loving my son, for wanting to spend time with him, for being part of his life. I was just protecting my marriage. Chloe shot back, but her voice sounded defensive now, less sure. You don't understand how hard it is to build a relationship when his mother is constantly interfering. Interfering? I was interfering by visiting twice a week, by bringing food I cooked with love, by just wanting to see my son and make sure he was okay? Yes, Chloe shouted, and for the first time, I saw her mask of composure crack completely. Yes, you were interfering, because Ryan could never fully focus on us. He was always thinking about you, feeling guilty if he didn't call you, worrying if you were okay. I needed him to put me first, for our relationship to be his priority. But that was never going to happen as long as you were so present in his life. So this was always about jealousy, I said, feeling a sudden, complete clarity. It wasn't about healthy boundaries or maturity. It was about you wanting to cut me out of the picture because you couldn't stand that Ryan loved me too. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. You showed it with every action. And the worst part is, you convinced my son that I was the problem, that my love was a burden. Ryan finally spoke, and his voice sounded tired, defeated. Mom, I never thought your love was a burden. Chloe had some valid points about boundaries, and I wanted to make our marriage work. At the cost of your relationship with me? I asked, feeling the tears well up again but refusing to let them fall. Is that price worth it, Ryan? Is it worth sacrificing your relationship with the woman who raised you, who worked overtime to pay for your school, who was there for every important moment of your life? Just to keep a woman happy who sees you as her personal possession. It's not like that, Chloe protested. I love Ryan. Everything I've done is because I love him and I want what's best for him. If you really loved him, I said, looking her straight in the eye, you wouldn't try to isolate him from the people who also love him. Real love doesn't require eliminating everyone else from the picture. Real love is generous, it's inclusive, it's confident in itself. A tense silence fell. Ryan stared at the ground, unable to meet either of our gazes. Chloe was breathing heavily, clearly trying to keep her emotions in check. And I just stood there, in the doorway of the house I had bought for my son, feeling stronger and sadder than I had in years. So, what are you going to do? Chloe finally asked, and in her voice, there was something new. Fear. Are you going to kick us out of the house? Is that what you want? To leave your son homeless, just to prove you have the power? No, I replied calmly. I would never do that. Because unlike you, Chloe, I do understand what it means to love someone. And loving someone means wanting what's best for them, even when they've hurt you. Then what? Ryan's voice was small, vulnerable, like when he was a little boy who had done something wrong. What I'm going to do, I said slowly, choosing my words with care, is give you a choice. You can continue living in this house, but under new conditions. You will get current on the late payment this week. You will start managing your money responsibly, with no more excessive spending that jeopardizes the monthly payment. And you will treat me with the respect I deserve as Ryan's mother and as the legal owner of this property. And if we don't accept those conditions, Chloe asked, with one last flash of defiance. Then I will exercise my legal right to reclaim my property. I can give you 30 days to find another place. That's what the law says when a tenant fails to meet their payment obligations. I watched Chloe go pale. The reality of the situation was finally penetrating her armor of arrogance. She had no power here. She never had. All that control she thought she had was an illusion, a fantasy built on false assumptions. That's blackmail, she said, her voice trembling. No, I corrected. It's a consequence. For months, you have treated me as if I don't matter, as if I have no right to be part of my son's life. You've humiliated me, belittled me, and pushed me until you thought I was gone for good. But it turns out I do matter, and I do have rights, and I am done letting anyone make me feel otherwise. Ryan finally looked up and met my gaze, and in his eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen in months. Respect. Maybe even a little admiration. Mom, I didn't know. I didn't realize how badly Chloe was treating you. Or maybe I did, and I just didn't want to see it, because it was easier to blame you. I know, honey, I said softly, and I understand why you did it. When you love someone, you want to believe the best of them. You want to think their intentions are pure. But love shouldn't require you to sacrifice other important relationships in your life. Chloe took a step toward Ryan, but he shifted away slightly. It was a small, almost imperceptible movement, but I saw it. And Chloe saw it, too. I saw the panic flash across her face. Ryan, baby, she's trying to split us up. Don't you see? This is all a manipulation to make you doubt me, to doubt us. No, Chloe. Ryan's voice was firm now. My mom isn't trying to split us up. You already did that, by making me choose between you from the very beginning. I was just too blind to see it. What are you saying? Chloe's voice rose, bordering on hysteria. Are you saying you believe her over me? Your wife? I'm saying, Ryan took a deep breath, that I've been ignoring a lot of things because I didn't want to face them. Like the fact that every time my mom called, you rolled your eyes. Or how you always found a reason to cut her visits short. Or how you conveniently forgot to invite her to family events. I did that for us. No, Ryan interrupted her. You did it for you. Because you wanted to have total control over my life, over my relationships, over every part of me. And I let you do it. Because I thought that's what a good husband was supposed to do. Chloe fell silent, tears beginning to roll down her cheeks. Ryan, please. She held out a hand to him. But Ryan didn't take it. I just wanted us to be happy together. I just wanted to build our own family without interference. Is that so wrong? It's not wrong to want to build a family, Ryan replied, and there was a deep sadness in his voice. But it's wrong to destroy other relationships in the process. My mom wasn't an interference, Chloe. She is my family. And you made me feel like I had to choose. I stayed silent, just watching this exchange. It wasn't my place to intervene now. This was a conversation that needed to happen between the two of them, without my influence. Ryan needed to come to his own conclusions, to make his own decisions. I never asked you to choose, Chloe protested, but her voice lacked conviction. I just asked you to set reasonable boundaries. Reasonable boundaries don't include making all the photos of my childhood disappear from our house, Ryan said. And for the first time, I heard a note of anger in his voice. Reasonable boundaries don't include going through my mother's purse to take her keys, and then making her feel guilty for losing them. Chloe froze. How? How did you know? Because I know you, Chloe, and because I've been remembering things I ignored at the time. Like that afternoon when my mom was looking for her keys and you were just so calm, so sure. Like you knew exactly where they were but just weren't going to tell her. Chloe's tears were flowing freely now. I did it for us. So she would understand she couldn't just walk in and out of our house whenever she wanted. It was her house, Chloe. It was always her house. And I gave her permission to come over whenever she wanted because she's my mother and I trust her. What's not okay is that you made her feel like a criminal for exercising that right. I walked over to Ryan then and put my hand on his shoulder. He turned to look at me, and I saw that his eyes were wet too. Honey, I didn't come here to destroy your marriage, I told him gently. I came because I needed to get some of my things from the garage. And yes, I also came because I needed to understand why I had been so completely pushed out of your life. But the last thing I want is for you two to split up because of me. It wouldn't be because of you, Mom, Ryan said, wiping his eyes on the back of his hand. It would be because of the choices I made, because of the things I allowed, because I didn't stand up for the one person who has loved me more than anyone in this world. I love you too, Chloe sobbed. Ryan, I love you so much. I know I made mistakes. I know I went too far. But it was all because I was so scared of losing you, scared that your mom would always be more important than me. A mother's love and a wife's love are different, Chloe, I said, looking at her directly. They don't compete with each other. They're not mutually exclusive. I never wanted to replace you in Ryan's heart. I just wanted to keep my place as his mother. But you saw it as a competition you had to win at all costs. Chloe covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking with sobs. For the first time since I'd met her, I saw her as vulnerable, stripped of that armor of control and confidence she always wore. And despite everything she had done to me, I felt a small flicker of compassion for her. Chloe, I said softly, waiting until she lowered her hands and looked at me. I am not your enemy. I never was. But I am also not going to let you treat me like I am. If you want to build a life with my son, you have to accept that I am part of his story, part of who he is. And that doesn't take anything away from you. It just gives you a bigger family. She looked at me with red, swollen eyes. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can share him. Then that's a conversation you need to have with Ryan, I replied. Because he deserves a partner who doesn't force him to choose between his family and his marriage. He deserves someone who loves all the parts of who he is, including the fact that he's Elizabeth Cole's son. Ryan walked over to Chloe and took her hands in his. Chloe, I need you to understand something. My mom is always going to be important in my life. That doesn't make you less important. But if you can't accept that, if you can't find a way to have a respectful relationship with her, then we have a serious problem that we need to solve. You're giving me an ultimatum, she asked, her voice trembling. I'm being honest about what I need for this marriage to work, Ryan replied. It's not an ultimatum, it's a reality. And I think, deep down, you've always known that, which is why you worked so hard to push her away, because you knew that if I ever really paid attention to how you were treating her, I wouldn't be okay with it. Chloe was quiet for a long moment, processing his words. Finally, she wiped her tears and took a deep breath. I need time, she said, her voice cracking. I need to think. It's a lot to process right now. Okay, Ryan said. Take the time you need. But in the meantime, we're going to respect the conditions my mom set. We're going to pay the late mortgage payment this week, and we're going to be more careful with our spending. Chloe nodded weakly and walked to the car without another word. She got into the passenger seat and closed the door, staring straight ahead with a lost expression. Ryan turned back to me. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't see what was happening. I'm sorry I made you feel unwelcome in my life. I'm sorry for everything. I hugged him then, this son of mine, who had grown so tall but who, in that moment, felt just like my little boy again. I'm sorry for some things too, honey. Sorry I didn't speak up sooner, that I didn't stand up for my place more forcefully. But I also understand. You were just trying to make your marriage work, and that's important. Not at the cost of losing you, he said, holding me tight. It should never have been at that cost. We stood there like that for a moment, in silence, healing some of the damage that had built up for months. When we separated, Ryan had a calmer, clearer expression. What were you really doing here? He asked with a small smile. You said you came for your boxes, but I suspect there was more to it. I came to get a little of my dignity back, I admitted. And yes, to understand the situation better. I found the bank letter by accident when I was in the office. I wasn't trying to snoop, but when I saw it, I needed to know more. I thought I made the payment, Ryan said, running his hand through his hair again. But looking back, I think Chloe and I had some big expenses this month, and she must have used that money for other things, thinking we could replace it later. It wasn't malicious, just irresponsible. The important thing is that you fix it, I said. I can help you with this month, if you need it. But after this, You two need to have a serious talk about your finances and your priorities. We will, Ryan promised. And Mom. About the house. I honestly didn't know it was still in your name. I thought we had changed it over at some point. I was going to, I admitted. I had planned to transfer the property to your name for your 30th birthday. As a gift, as a way of saying you were fully an adult and responsible for your own life. But after everything that's happened, I'm glad I hadn't done it yet. Ryan nodded. I get it. Do you still plan to? Eventually. It depends, I answered honestly. It depends on how things go from here. It depends on you learning how to balance your married life with your relationship with me. It depends on a lot of things. That's fair, Ryan said. The following days were strange, filled with an expectant tension. Ryan kept his word and paid the overdue mortgage payment, using their emergency savings and drastically cutting back on their unnecessary expenses. He called to confirm the money had been deposited, and in his voice there was a mix of shame and determination that reminded me of the responsible boy I had raised before Chloe had clouded his judgment. Chloe, for her part, remained completely silent. She didn't call me, didn't send a text, didn't attempt any kind of outreach. Ryan told me she was processing things in her own way and had started going to individual therapy to work on her insecurities and controlling behaviors. It was a first step, though I knew the road would be long. It was 2 weeks after the confrontation when I finally received a call from Chloe. My first instinct was to ignore it, but something made me press the green button. Elizabeth? Her voice was different, smaller, stripped of that arrogant confidence she always carried. Do you have time to talk? I'd like to see you, if you're willing. We agreed to meet at a neutral coffee shop, a place where neither of us had the home field advantage. I arrived 15 minutes early and ordered a black coffee, watching out the window as I waited. When Chloe walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore no makeup and was dressed in jeans and a casual sweater. She looked younger, more vulnerable. She sat down across from me and ordered a chamomile tea. There was an awkward silence as we waited for our drinks. When they finally arrived, Chloe wrapped her hands around the hot mug and took a deep breath. I don't know where to start, she admitted, staring into the steaming liquid. I've replayed this moment 1,000 times in my head, but now that you're actually here, all the words feel wrong. A simple "I'm sorry" would be a good start, I said, not unkindly, but not softening the truth either. I'm sorry, she said immediately, looking up to meet my eyes. I am so sorry, Elizabeth. I'm sorry for how I treated you. I'm sorry I tried to push you out of your son's life. I'm sorry for every cruel comment, every subtle humiliation, every single moment I made you feel unwelcome. The words sounded sincere, but I had learned to be cautious. Why did you do it, Chloe? That's the part I still don't understand. What did I ever do to you to deserve that? She looked down again, and I saw tears well up in her eyes. You didn't do anything. That's the whole point. You were perfect. You were the perfect mother who had raised the perfect man. And I come from a broken family. My father abandoned us when I was 8. My mother spent the rest of my childhood bitter, telling me to never fully trust a man, that they all leave eventually. She paused, wiping away a tear. When I met Ryan, he was different from any man I'd ever known. He was kind, he was considerate, he was loyal. And he had this beautiful relationship with you, this connection that I never had with my own mother. And instead of admiring that, I saw it as a threat. A threat to what? I asked softly. To my security. To my place in his life. I thought if he loved you that much, he would eventually realize I wasn't good enough. That he would compare our love to the love he had for you, and I would come up short. So, I decided to eliminate the competition. To push you away, so that he would only have me. There was a raw, painful honesty in her words that was hard to hear, but necessary. Chloe, a son's love for his mother and his love for his wife aren't comparable. They're not in competition. They're two completely different kinds of love. I know that now, she said. My therapist has explained it to me. A lot. But I just had these deep, deep wounds from my own childhood, and I couldn't see it. I just saw that Ryan called you when he had a problem, that he looked to you for advice, that your opinion mattered to him. And in my twisted mind, that meant I wasn't enough. I took a sip of my coffee, processing her words. Part of me wanted to hold on to my anger, to my justified pain. But another part, the part that had raised a son with love and compassion, understood that childhood wounds could warp the way we see the world. I appreciate your honesty, I said finally. And I understand that you're coming from a place of pain. But understanding why you did it doesn't erase the damage you caused. Not just to me, but to Ryan. You put him in an impossible position, made him choose between two people he loves. I know, she whispered, and if I could go back and do it all differently, I would. But I can't. All I can do is try to be better from now on. And how do I know this is genuine? I asked. How do I know this isn't just another manipulation, another strategy to get back in control? Chloe met my gaze directly. You don't. You can't know for sure. I can only show you, over time, with my actions. But, I swear to you, Elizabeth, I don't want to lose Ryan. And I've realized that if I keep going down that path, I will. He made it very clear to me that he will not sacrifice his relationship with you for me. And does that bother you? I asked, watching her reaction carefully. It terrified me at first, she admitted. But then, it made me think. If Ryan is willing to stand up for you, he's willing to stand up for what's right. He would stand up for me if someone was treating me badly. That loyalty he has to you. It's part of what makes him such a good man. And I was trying to destroy the very quality that made me fall in love with him. There was a wisdom in those words, a maturity I hadn't seen in Chloe before. The therapy is helping, I observed. Yes, she nodded. I'm learning a lot about myself, about my fears, my insecurities, my toxic patterns, and I'm working on changing them. But not just for Ryan. For me. I don't want to be that person who hurts people because of her own fears. We sat in silence for a moment, each lost in our own thoughts. I looked at this woman who had been my antagonist for so long, and for the first time, I saw a whole person, with her own scars and struggles. I'm not going to say everything is forgiven, I said finally. That wouldn't be honest. I'm still healing from the hurt you caused. But I appreciate you coming to talk to me, and I appreciate you being honest about your reasons. It's a start. Do you think we could ever have a good relationship? Chloe asked, a cautious hope in her voice. I'm not asking to be best friends. Just, mutual respect, civility, maybe, eventually, something like family. I think that's possible, I replied, surprising myself with my own sincerity. But it's going to take time, and it's going to take you proving, with actions and not just words, that you've really changed. I understand, she said, and I'm willing to do the work. For Ryan and, honestly, for me too. I don't like the person I was. I don't want to look back in 10 years and realize I destroyed something beautiful because of my own irrational fears. We finished our drinks, talking about more mundane things. She told me about her job as a graphic designer, something we had never once discussed. I told her about my office and my coworkers. It was strange, almost surreal, to be having a normal conversation with her after so many months of tension and hostility. When we said goodbye in the parking lot, Chloe held out her hand. I looked at it for a moment before taking it. It wasn't a hug, it wasn't complete forgiveness, but it was an acknowledgement, a sign that we were both willing to try. The following months brought gradual but significant changes. Ryan started visiting me more often, sometimes alone, sometimes with Chloe. The visits with Chloe were still a bit awkward, but there was a marked difference in her behavior. There were no more passive-aggressive comments, no more attempts to control how long we spent together. For my 63rd birthday, they showed up together with a cake they had baked themselves. It was a delicious, lopsided mess with way too much frosting, but they had made it with their own hands, and that meant something. Chloe had even brought a gift, a photo album she had created, filled with pictures of Ryan through the years, many of them from photos I had shared with her. I thought it would be nice to have these memories organized, she said shyly, and I wanted you to know that I recognize the history you two have, that I respect it. It was a small gesture, but a powerful one. It showed she was trying to repair the damage she had done by erasing those photos from their house. Ryan blossomed under this new equilibrium. I saw him relax, saw him become more like the son I remembered from before his marriage. He and Chloe seemed stronger, too, paradoxically united by having weathered this crisis rather than being destroyed by it. One Saturday afternoon, 6 months after the big confrontation, I was sitting in my apartment enjoying a cup of tea when my doorbell rang. It was Ryan, by himself. "Hey, Mom," he said with a smile. "Got time for me?" "I always have time for you, honey," I replied, letting him in. He sat on the sofa and pulled an envelope from his backpack. "I have something for you." I opened the envelope and found a check for $25,000, the exact amount I had paid for the down payment on the house all those years ago. "Ryan, what is this?" I asked, completely stunned. "It's the down payment you paid for the house. Chloe and I have been saving, cutting back on expenses, being much more responsible with our money, and we want to pay you back for what you invested. It's not fair that you carried that weight all by yourself." I felt tears sting my eyes. "Honey, I don't need this money back. I gave it to you out of love, as a gift." "I know, Mom, but we want to, because we also want to ask you something." "What is it?" "We want to ask you to transfer the house into my name, officially, not because we're afraid you'll use it against us, but because it's time for me to take full responsibility. It's time for me to grow up and be the real owner of my own life." I looked at the check in my hands, then I looked at my son, and finally, I nodded. "Okay, I'll call my lawyer next week, and we'll start the transfer process." Ryan pulled me into a tight hug. "Thank you, Mom, for everything, for the house, for not giving up on me, for teaching me what unconditional love really means." "Thank you," I whispered back, "for finally seeing me, for standing up for me, and for finding the balance we all needed." That night, after Ryan had left, I sat on my balcony, looking out at the city lights. I thought about all the pain I had been through, the tears I had cried, the sleepless nights spent wondering if I had lost my son for good. But I also thought about the strength I had discovered in myself, the dignity I had reclaimed by refusing to be steamrolled. I had learned that love doesn't require sacrificing your self-worth, that standing up for your boundaries doesn't make you unloving, and that sometimes the greatest act of love is teaching others how they need to treat you. The house, that property I had bought with so much sacrifice and love, would finally be in Ryan's name. But the lesson we had all learned together that couldn't be transferred with any legal document, that lesson about respect, about family, and about the balance between a mother's love and a wife's love that would live in all of us forever. And as the cool night air brushed my face, I smiled. I had won back something far more valuable than a house or a legal deed. I had won back my dignity. I had reclaimed my place in my son's life. And I had proven, to Chloe and to myself, that a mother who loves fiercely can also stand up for herself with that same fire. The keys Chloe had asked me about, the ones I needed, they didn't matter anymore. I had never needed physical keys to have a place in my son's heart. That place had always been mine, and now we all knew it.